We're going live. We're live.
Okay, we're live?
Yes.
Okay. So for those of you that are watching, thank you for joining. This will be the third budget workshop for the Suffern Central School District. At this time, we'll turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Steve Schloika, to give our most recent presentation. So take it away, Steve.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the budget workshop tonight on Tuesday, April 21st. We'll get right into it. First and foremost, I just want to let everybody know if you have any questions for us, you can email us at www.sufferncencral.org, or should I say you can go to our website at www.sufferncencral.org, or you can email questions to us at budget@sufferncencral.org. I would like to thank one person last week did email us about 3 questions. They were very good questions, and I'm going to be getting with that person after this presentation tonight to answer those questions. The 3 questions that were asked were actually addressed in the prior 2 budget presentations that I had done, so I'm going to send that individual copies of the slides so they can see it. So again, thank you very much to that individual. Moving forward, what we did is you can see we actually cut the budget one more time. We went from the 145 million down to 144 million. Our anticipated expenditures now are 144,333,814. As you can see in the bottom middle of your screen is now the new proposed budget. We dropped it approximately another $860,000, and on the next screen you'll see where we did that and how we got there.
Would you say how much was that? 860?
You can see right here, proposal number 3 and proposal number 4. You'll see we dropped another $860,000 if you look at the right-hand column, the bottom number, and you can see how we got there. I'll explain this in just a second as we go through the slides, but you can see we've been through 4 proposals now. Our all-in budget was 146. Proposal 2 and 3 that were given to you were 145.7 and 145.193. This proposal again drops at 144,333,814, and basically this was in anticipation and because of our actual aid got dropped by about $869,000 in the last state aid run, but subsequently promised about $860,000 from the federal government, we hope, in the CARES Act. So what we did is we were actually preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. And what we did here, and again, not to affect any staffing levels or not to affect any programs, if you take a look down in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see capital expenditures. The bulk of this came out of those capital expenditures. What we were going to do was transfer money in from our reserve into our operating budget to cover this, but what we're doing now, so it wouldn't affect the operating budget, is actually move this, as you'll see a little bit later, into the capital projects fund and fund it fully with reserves. And that totally removes it then from the operating budget, no effect. Some salaries we went through, we found a few salaries. One of them was actually in there twice, and we actually had one extra clerical staff in there that we removed. And we also went through our supplies budget and cut another $40,500 from the supplies budget to come to a nice even number of $860,000. I'll move on to the next slide. And you can see that represents a 1.3% decrease from the prior budget altogether of the 146. Moving along. Our salaries increase, we were asked to do an analysis of the salaries increase of the budget and what it looked like. And here you can see the adopted 1920 budget in the center, our proposed budget tonight on the left-hand column, and the difference in the far right. And you can see the total salaries going up in the district are about $1.7 million, which is almost a total increase of the budget itself. Here's anticipated revenues as we go through, and again, 144,333,814. Basically, you'll notice the reserve line item in there, and the in our tax levy. In this slide, again, planning for the worst, you can see the percent difference in the lower right-hand corner is 1.75%. That's what we're looking at currently, and we looked at that as the worst case scenario after the 2 discussions that we'd already had. We didn't think the board would even entertain anything higher than 1.75.
So the 3.8 million use of other reserves that you're proposing, do you have, or maybe it's later in the presentation, the specific? Okay, you already know what I'm going to ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll keep moving along and you ask as I go. Okay.
I'll let you keep going.
All right. Here we go. Here's the tax levy increase percentages on the left-hand side, just as we did the last 2 meetings. The tax levy increase in dollars in the center, and the use of reserves, depending on what you pick for a tax levy increase for this $144 million budget. As you can see, at the 1.75 in the prior slide, we have a tax levy of about $1.9 million and the use of reserves of $3.7 million. In the next slides to come, I'll show you how we're going to use those reserves and where they're going to come from. Here's our reserve utilization slide. You can see some will come from the employees' retirement system, some will come from our insurance reserves, our unemployment reserve, our benefits reserve, and if you will, to wrap it up, would be the tax certiorari reserve. That we had discussed that possibly we may or may not want to lower. I'll go into the next slide too. That'll explain your tax certiorari reserves. Here's all of our reserves and what we use them for. And the tax search reserve obviously is used for real property tax refunds, which we're still battling. Insurance, obviously, for uninsured settlements, we have a few of those out there still. Unemployment, I think, is self-explanatory. Benefits used for retirement incentives that we may or may not choose to have. Employees' retirement systems used for unexpected rate increases. Same thing with the teachers' retirement system. And to, when we have a large rate in any one year, to kind of smooth that out. Debt service, as you already know, that's already planned for the next 2 to 3 years, and we'll be using that up in total. And capital reserves, as you know, you've already established this reserve for $10 million over the course to do capital projects. The next slide is our capital reserve projects, and you'll notice I'll point out the asterisks at the bottom, because I don't want you to think or be confused to think that any of this is part of the operating budget. It is not. This will be fully funded by the $2.9 million in reserve. And currently these projects were out there. Our best guess, if you will, was about $2.8 million for all of these projects, for these 4 projects. Some will come in less, some will come in a little bit more. I'm just trying to think of the alarm system upgrades, for example, you'll be dealing with a little bit later today. That one did come in a little bit lower than we had anticipated, so that was a good thing. The LED lighting, we have a presentation that was done a while back with an anticipated cost, but those other 3 we won't know until we actually go out to bid and have that in our hands.
Okay, so Steve, when you have at the bottom, you said they were accounted for in the capital projects fund. So if you go back to the previous screen, the previous slide, that 2.9 million.
That's the balance currently in that reserve fund, and at least 2.8 million of that could possibly be used for these projects.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be 2.8. I think it'll be less, but yes.
Okay. But these projects would be funded out of that reserve that's already sitting there.
Correct.
Okay. So let me ask.
We've already saved that money.
Okay. So a follow-up question would be, and I'm not advocating for this, I'm just asking, if the board decided that they wanted to use those funds, what would have to happen to move capital reserve money into a general fund to be used for, just for the regular budget?
Well, the Board of Education would have to go through an analysis to determine that you didn't need those funds. and any unneeded funds that you determine are there, then you could pass a resolution to transfer to the general operating budget.
Right, because that fund was set up specifically for capital improvements.
Correct.
So, and again,
Correct.
I'm not advocating that we do that. I just wanted to ask the question while
Well,
my mind.
there's another little fly in the ointment, if you will, is you've also passed the voters also, you passed the proposition with the voters to be able to create that fund.
Mhm.
So you may also have to pass another proposition to now say we don't need these and put them back to the general fund.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Yes. Okay. All right. We'll move on. Here's the tax certiorari reserve utilization. We were also asked about this at the last meeting. So we went through and we did, as you can see on the top in the blue, the tax levy percent increase. And what we did is we took the current balance that we think we're going to have in that tax cert reserve as of June 30th at the end of this school year. You can see that all the way across the top, approximately $22 million. We look at the current tax certiorari claims that we have of about $24 million. And then you'll see the next line down, the third line is potential tax cert claims. We get somewhere between $5 and $6 million a year in tax cert claims that wash in and out of the district. So I don't know if you realize that. So you have then left over as we go through the budget, the potential reserve usage. And then down on the bottom, you'll see the reserve percentages. We talked about what was a good percentage. What is the Board of Education comfortable with? If you pass the budget, depending on your tax levy percentage across the top of the screen, what would your reserve percentage be in just the tax certiorari reserve? That's what you're looking at, just the tax certiorari reserve utilization. Now, the other thing that I would say is I want you all to remember this is all also, the use of these reserves is also dependent on how we end up this school year. We usually end up underspending our budget. We're usually very good at that, thank goodness. And that's how you created these reserves. So potentially you may not touch this reserve at all or touch it very, very in a light way. You may not touch it 100%. Okay, so I want to make sure that each and every one of you knows that as well. This is again worst case scenario.
Mr. Schleicher, it's Angus McKenzie. I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Last year, it's my understanding that we had like almost a $2 million surplus left at the end of the school year. So that money went into reserves last year, right? So
correct. Almost $2.3 million went into reserves.
Right. So if that's the case, then our operating budget last year was somewhere around $140 million. That's what the actual cost, if we had $2.3 million surplus. Am I right in saying that?
Correct.
So
approximately, yes.
So if we put the two budgets next to each other, I mean, you just said that the
budget to budget, we're looking at an increase of approximately 2%.
Right. I see what you're saying, but what I'm saying is if you put the budgets next to each other and you have the 140 million that we spent last year and the 144 that you're claiming we're going to spend this year, what is the biggest disparity in the two? You did already mention that the salaries was like 1.7%, right?
Yeah, I won't say there's big disparities. You also need to remember that in every budget, again, in planning for the worst, you also plan usually 1 to 2% into this budget, all over the budget, not just in any one specific place. For example, salaries have a few positions, sitting in them as well as a just in case. I mean, you're looking at TRS and ERS. Nothing in a budget is an exact figure normally, because normally you're planning just for a little overage, just as good operating practice. And you've done that all these years, and that's how you've developed these reserves, and that's why you're in this in a very good position that you're in now.
No, I understand that, but my point is that we're looking at rather lean times here for folks. There's people losing their jobs out there and everything, and where we're saying, oh well, we've got it down to this 2.2% figure here now. If we use our funds and such. And, I think that, our taxpayers deserve a little better than that. I mean, quite honestly, there's going to be people that aren't going to be able to afford to pay that 2%. So, I think we really need to look hard at where we underspent the budget last year and maybe look to possibly cut those areas down to a better number and a more manageable number for our school district and our taxpayers.
Point well taken. I will caution this. I do think this is going to be, I think everyone would agree, probably a 2 to 3 year event, much like it was in 08-09. I don't know the severity of it, but I will say this, please remember, that our goal is to provide, education to children and how you do that, and to be able to maintain building. As you start to lower those reserves, you start to get into some dangerous territory. Let me see if I can just move forward here. I'll look at our goals here, and I have some questions, here that, I put up again this in our last slide, because there are some big unknowns. For example, I'll just shoot one out there for you right now. For example, transportation. I had to do a survey for the New York State Education Department the other night, and some of the questions were about transportation, whether or not, if you paid for your transportation already based on whether you use BOCES or an independent contractor, or you own your own buses and pay your own staff. So now you see the problem of how deep the question can be. For example, for us, we're currently not paying our transportation contract. We're paying our utilization, or what they're doing for us for feeding children. But we're not paying the transportation contract. They laid off their drivers. So now the question is now, okay, we didn't pay it, great. We may have to pay it. The state may come back and say to us, yes, you have to pay that. Then, yeah, absolutely, we pay them, we get state aid. Now, also you think about, well, if we don't, great, we didn't pay them. We have less expense this year, but we also know next year, if we have 100% transportation again next year, which I hope we will, we'll now have less aid to offset that transportation cost. So whatever we didn't spend in this budget year, we have to hold over for next budget year to actually fund the shortfall we're going to get in aid in transportation. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Got it.
I'm sorry if I confused you. I'll go
No, got it. Yeah.
This year, our expense is lower,
Right.
but our aid for next year will be lower, because remember, we received transportation aid the year after we expended. So we received transportation aid for this fiscal year we're in right now, next year. Now, we've been given a number by the State Education Department on our aid runs that you've seen, based on 100% utilization of transportation for all 10 months of the school year. Well, as we know, there will be no transportation expense through part of March, April, May, and June. So if we don't have to pay that, we also don't get any aid on that. So if next year we all come back to school, there's no viruses, we're good, we spend 10 months in school, we have 10 months worth of transportation expense, but we lack 4 months of aid this year that would have been given to us to offset that cost next year.
Right.
So that's the dangerous part in this budget, by reducing it to the point of, wait a minute, well, we didn't spend it, let's get rid of it. It's a dangerous game right now.
And
It's shifting sands, and that's why you see the slide in front of you saying, what's going to be the effects on the local, state, and national economy, and what will New York State be able to provide us? One of you mentioned, I believe, Don, you mentioned that, I know the School Boards Association sent some stuff out to you today about 08-09 and what happened and what to think about, and, renegotiating contracts and laying people off. One of the things that we were told that the Board of Ed did not want to do is lay people off. Yeah, and I hope that's still the case. If it is, then okay, we've done this by moving another $860,000 out of the budget, another almost 1.6% out of this budget. We've cut it down to basically all you're looking at right now is salary increases.
Steve, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
and I know your opinion because you said it just a little while ago, and I know you've previously said it, that you believe that the current economic situation will probably last 2 to 3 years.
I believe so.
Does that, is there any correlation between let's call it a recession just for just for the sake of it? Is there any correlation between a recession and the number of tax certs that wind up getting paid out?
I would say yes. Our attorney obviously would be able to put a better light on that, but I would say yes. It's been my experience because obviously in a recessionary economy, assessments are normally dropping. Your values of your homes and businesses, your real property is going down, not up.
Right.
And it's much easier than to win a tax certiorari case because it's definitely for real. It's happening.
Right. So it is something to consider that, if we're going to lower our tax cert reserve, which is now at about 85%.
Correct.
We could wind up somewhere down the road in a really sticky situation if we go too far. And because of the economic downturn, we wind up having to actually pay out a lot more tax certs than we're generally used to paying.
Correct. And again, I'll remind everyone one more time that we normally end up the school year in a very good situation. I think we're going to end up this school year in a decent situation. It'll probably look even a little larger than normal, but you got to remember things like those transportation expenses, even BOCES expenses. BOCES is another. I'll give you in a second example of BOCES. BOCES, we pay BOCES using a budget situation. So every month we pay them a monthly amount every month on a budget. Okay, just like you would a car payment, so to speak. We keep paying them. Whatever we don't utilize during our school year, they refund to us in the next school year. Okay, they don't typically reduce it during the school year. They may for some things. But usually you pay that budget, and then whatever you don't expend, they give you back in what they call a BOCES refund in the next school year. That may also be, it may be larger, it may be smaller. We're not sure right now because we don't have enough guidance coming out of SED right now, or even the governor's office, division of budget, or anyone else to say, okay, we're paying BOCES, for example, right now 100% for transportation. They didn't lay any of their staff off. They're paying their staff. And that was one of the questions in that survey that I did for the state education department is, they're paying their staff. So, okay, so will we get a typical reimbursement of that, even though they're not transporting our students? We're not sure. We're really not sure. This is uncharted waters for everyone right now. So I'm not sure of the nuances on how this will play out. Because there are so many iterations of this, different iterations in every school district across the state. I use that transportation, whether or not you own your own buses and you have your own employees, or whether you have your employees and you rent buses, or you're like us and you have a combination of a hired contractor and BOCES doing buses, doing transportation. So it's all up in the air right now. And I think that was why the general guidance was, I think we need to let this marinate until the end of the month to see where the state is going to be. Because if you remember back, what they called it was the greatest recession since the Great Depression in 08-09, was the federal government didn't have any money to give to states. So the states didn't have any money to give the school districts or the municipalities. So although I'm all for lessening the blow of our local taxpayers, I really am. I'm very cognizant of that. I think it could be dangerous to go too low. As Matt pointed out when he looked back at the chart I gave you last time in 08-09, you noticed they came out at almost 2%, and they were laying people off. Right now, you're not laying people off. Mm-hmm. As the School Board Association sent out to you folks, I believe this morning or this afternoon, that chart of a reminder of what happened in 08-09.
Mhm.
And that's what you're trying to prevent here in this district right now. Zero is a very dangerous territory. I would not recommend zero. I would recommend, again, I would recommend somewhere at least in at least a 0.5% to somewhere in the 1.5 range at least. I think if you go much lower than that, I think you're in very dangerous territory, because again, this is going to be a 2 and 3 year happening. And I don't think and I think it's going to be a repeat. I think most of us here on the screen tonight have lived through it. And again, the federal government is printing money. We know that. They're going to have to print money to save these businesses. They've saved Wall Street so far. They haven't saved, the restaurants and the small businesses yet. The loans they're trying to get them out there. They're trying to get the unemployment out there. It's going to be rough, because they're right now there really is no money, and we get that. But again, we have to educate students, and that does come at a cost. And I'll say this, we are very fortunate to be one of those districts that has planned ahead and has reserves to be able to smooth this transition out over the course of a 3 and 4 year period, if it took that long, and still be okay and be able to maintain our buildings and be able to maintain our staff.
Yeah, Steve, I know that one of the things that the governor has said, besides giving us those range of months where they're going to make an adjustment or possibly make an adjustment in terms of money to the schools. And then I think it was just the other day, he said that it could be a 50% drop off, which I hope is not. And I hope it's closer to a lot less than that. So we're really dealing with a lot of question marks here.
Yes.
We don't know what the state is going to be able to give us. We don't know what the federal government is going to be able to give to the states. It's just
yes. History is definitely repeating itself, and like I said on the slide here, will this year's distributions to us from the state of New York and our foundation aid, will they be underfunded? Possibly.
Sure.
Possibly the few payments that we receive may be underfunded. So again, I go back into I'd be very careful out there with what we do. And again, some of the things that we're going to do is we're working on numbers right now and looking at assessments and looking at, okay, what would a 1% increase be to the average home in our school district? What would that mean? So you have those numbers as well as we move forward. So you'll have those numbers as well, and try to make an educated decision as possible that's respectful of the taxpayers, respectful of educating their children, and respectful basically to education moving forward as a whole, and what we all leave behind as our legacy.
Steve, could you go back 2 slides?
2 slides, yes.
Okay, quick question for you. I was under the impression that one of the reasons, I was really interested in the solar panels for the roofs. And you have to tell us, before we had to do that, we had to do the LED lighting, okay? And then you could then replace the roof and then put solar panels on, and you'd save a tremendous amount of money, at least 30% of your utility budget. My question is, if we're going to do the LED lighting this year, why do we have to do a roof replacement on Sloatsburg and the Suffern Middle School? Wouldn't the whole purpose of doing the lighting is to get the idea of doing the roofs next year and putting on solar panels and saving additional monies? I don't understand why it's in there. Okay, can we not just simply limp through in terms of making a pact on the roof for this coming year and save, I believe the figure there was $300,000? I'm not sure.
Well, I would say this, if something should happen 1 year out that's even worse than it is right now, I'd rather have dry roofs than LEDs.
So therefore, you're going to put the LED lighting in this year and replace the 2 roofs.
Absolutely. That was the decision that was made when we prioritized these with Mr. Palma. These are what came up, and absolutely, because if for some reason 1 year out I can't replace that library roof, heaven forbid the economy even turns worse, what do we do? Right now, we have the money to do these projects and have what I call a dry envelope. Because as you know, I'm sure, if you don't have a dry envelope, everything underneath that roof gets wet. Now you've caused even more damage
Yes. Yeah.
and more expense. You can either spend, I liken it to, you can either spend $1 now or $4 later.
Right, but I think Don's point was to to getting solar panels where the cost of the roof would be zero or close to zero.
We are putting in solar panels. Buying the solar panels will actually help offset the cost of the roofs. Absolutely, I agree with him.
Right.
I agree 100%.
But it's that 1 year that you're worried about, which
Correct.
we should
Right
all be
now,
worried
we
about.
do
Right?
these, and it looks like the way we're going to end up this school year, we'll also be able to hopefully refund this capital repair reserve and keep moving forward. Now, we're going to look at these, and obviously these aren't being done all at once. So these are actually in a list of priorities. And if we decide something is different and we need to hold back, then we can do that.
So these 4 projects you have listed in order of what you believe is priority.
Basically, yes. I would say the fire alarm system, though, is probably number 1.
Yeah, that's
That would
safety.
probably
Sure.
be out of order. That's obviously safety, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but other than that, absolutely. When you talk about roofs, yeah, they raise right up there to the top. Because if you don't have a dry envelope, everything underneath it gets ruined. Now you're talking about insulation, you're talking about ceiling tiles, floors, desks, chairs.
Books and floor, right? Sure. Yeah.
And that could not be fixed by a patch.
No, not at this point.
That's what Mr. Palmer has said, that it's really an emergency.
Correct. These are set to be done and done now. He wouldn't have recommended them if that were the case.
Knowing that we were recommending the LED lighting so that we could progress to getting the roof done, to progress getting the solar panels. Doesn't make
you're getting your LED lighting.
right. But that the idea.
But that was step 1.
Yeah.
To move forward.
Right. I think we can't even figure out what's going to happen in the next month.
Well,
And we're all kind of scrambling to put a budget together to make it as lean as possible with a lot of assumptions. And I think to try to figure out what position we're going to be sitting in 12 months from now when we're doing this again. I mean, we may be in like you said, Steve, in an even worse situation where solar panels just simply aren't in the ballpark. And at that point, you've delayed roof replacements. And now maybe a year from now, not only are you not going to do solar panels, but you don't even have the money to do the roof replacement anymore.
Right. Deferred maintenance is not a good thing. And LED lighting is not deferred maintenance. That's an extra.
Yeah. But it will save us money. It will save us 30% on our lighting bill. When you say our total utility bill, that's not what's in the presentation that I read.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So again, it pays for itself in a little over 3 years. It's a good project. I'm not complaining. It's a great project, and I'm gonna do my best to make sure that it gets in, because it makes sense that yes, you're saving money for the taxpayers moving forward. It's a smart project. There's no doubt about it.
And
But right
Steve,
now, we also need these roofs, and we can do these roofs. And while the reserve funds are there, and you've set them aside to do it, we should do it now, because heaven forbid those roofs get any worse and they do leak, we're going to be in trouble.
Okay, was better err on the side of caution, I guess.
Absolutely, we're planning for the worst and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. If, assuming for argument's sake, we take the roofs out of this capital reserve and we don't do them, that money's still going to sit there, right? Like Matt was saying, we can't move that money to go to the operating budget unless there's voting and changing and everything, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
So the money's there, and I think my view would be to take advantage of having the reserve there, and because you can't really use it for anything else.
Correct.
Yes, you can. You could put it into the tax levy.
Only if,
that's
what I was saying before, though.
Vote on it.
That may require not only a vote, but a new resolution for people to vote, for the taxpayers to vote on.
Right. It can be done.
And remember this, well, remember right now, are you going to sell to the taxpayers, by the way, we're not going to do the roof at Sloatsburg or Suffern Middle School, we're going to put the money back into the general fund? You,
no, we don't want to.
you get very little building aid, remember, when you do these projects.
But if that's lowering their taxes, if that money going into the general fund is going to be used to lower the tax burden, they may agree to that.
But I'll say this, it may in the short term, but it won't in the long term. Again, I go back to, you can either spend $1 now to put the roof on, or wait till it leaks and spend $4 to fix it later. And you may not have the $4 later.
Steve, is this what Mr. Palm is recommending? He's
Correct.
recommending we do all this stuff immediately and that it can't wait?
He prioritized these for us.
Okay.
Yeah. So that being said, I don't know if anyone has any other questions. If not, I'll remind people that if you have any questions, again, go to our website or email our questions to budget@sufferncencentral.org. And I'll say thank you very much.
So
One last question then. Basically, if we looked at the situation right now and tried to go to a zero tax levy, that would still leave 17 million plus in the reserves, and our reserve would be at 59%, correct?
that's the tax cert reserve only.
That's a tax.
Only the tax. That's correct. That's the numbers you say. Yes, absolutely.
That's not too bad under the circumstances. The idea is we've got to really reduce this budget as much as possible with regard to this year in particular. It may be bad next year, but I think right now, okay, we want to get that budget passed. And the only way to do it is to make sure that we're doing the best job in terms of fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, I agree in theory, but I personally don't agree with bringing our tax cert down under 60%, especially with the possibility of assessments coming in the next couple of years because of a downturn in the economy and having to pay more out in tax certs. I just think that's a very, very slippery slope to go down.
59 versus 60.
Say again?
It's basically 59 versus 60 in terms of the percentage. It's not that.
Yeah, that's all. Well, that's if we go this route.
Right.
That's if we use these funds. I mean, this is just showing. I mean, the slide that's in front of us is simply showing if you use the tax cert fund to cover the entire balance you're going to pay out of reserves.
Correct.
That doesn't mean that you're going to do that. I mean, you could use a different reserve. All I'm saying is I don't think tax cert fund should drop that low. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would just remind you to take a look at the slide that was given to you in our last presentation too, about our tax cert refunds and the amounts and the holes they create in the budget, the unfunded holes. They're at least $500,000 a year on average. So when you say you come out at zero, just remember you've got you're now created a budget. You've now created a budget with at least $500,000 hole, because you're going to give money back now that you didn't get in a tax levy.
Right.
Back to the taxpayers again.
Right.
We create a hole of say half a million.
At least.
We still came in 2 million above what we used.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully. The budget is getting tighter. There's no doubt in my mind. It is getting tighter. Like I said, it's hard to sit here and say, okay, we won't affect any employees. We won't lay anyone off. We won't reduce our workforce and come out with a 0% tax increase. Because normally zeros are hard to recover from. Normally what happens is you go 0 one year, and then the next year you end up not only doing what you should have done this year, but you compound the problem in the next year.
Right. Right, because that money, because you don't get that back. So if you, I know.
Never on the table again.
Right.
So I just heed a word of caution. That's all.
Yeah. Can you go just back to the last, really the second to last slide, the one before the question slide? No. Keep going. Yes. Is there
What's
anything that you can inform us or the public that's watching about, what is to come, or, potential dates for when things may have to get done?
I can tell you, if you look at the last bullet right now, will the budget adoption dates change? Yes.
Right.
But we obviously don't know.
Right.
We don't know what's going to happen right now. We don't know whether the state of New York will give you, as the Board of Education, now the authority to do what municipalities do. And all you would need is 50% plus one to be able to pass our budget. And it would take 60%, obviously, if you needed a supermajority for some reason, if you pierced the tax cap. That may or may not happen. I'm not sure. As time goes on, again, we don't have any guidance to that. I believe you were all sent an article from the Buffalo News today about that.
Yes.
The second to the last bullet, will aid be adjusted or reduced next year based on New York state revenue receipts? Absolutely. And this is a huge question mark in my mind. And this is one of the biggest reasons I would caution you against this zero, because as the state receipts come in and they get adjusted, and if we get a mid-year adjustment or we get adjusted on every payment, what do we do? In 2 years' time, there won't be enough reserves to make this up.
No. Nope.
No, but the point I think that Don was trying to make before was that, we have been coming in, we've been saying, yep, okay, 2% raise on the budget, 2% raise on the budget. Historically, that's been putting it right at or about the cap. Last year, we moved it down to 1%, spent reserves, and still came in $2 million with a $2 million surplus. And we've learned that $1 million is basically a percentage point. So for all intents and purposes, we were putting in a lot less money than we needed to, or putting in a lot more money, and ended up with getting that money back, Matt, that you were saying that we weren't going to ever get back, because we were already padding those numbers. And that's what the controller has been telling us for years, that we are putting too much money into our budget and we're padding our budget too much each year. That's what they've been telling us, which is why our reserves are so high.
I will point out this slide to you, and you'll see the bottom number is 3.1 million. I'll point out the difference in the top in the salaries and benefits that are 2.8 of that 3.1. So if you think it's padded somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, Angus, just to clarify what
here it is. That's why I said this budget is as tight as I've seen. Teresa, if you want to chime in, you're more than welcome. But you're seeing there 2.85 million in salaries and benefits.
Yeah. Yep.
Of the $3.1 million increase.
So it's money that definitely is going to be
going down and technology going down.
Angus, just to clarify something,
It's 700,000 out of the building project, took them out of the operating budget and moved them over to the capital projects fund. So it's all salaries and benefits.
Yeah. Well, that's what
when you say it's padded here someplace.
I wasn't speaking of this budget. I've been saying historically, we've been getting that money back. Matt was saying, oh, if it's a zero, you're never getting that money back. But historically, we have been. That's why our reserves are so high.
No, what I meant by that is when you go at zero, your next year, and Steve could do probably a much more eloquent job explaining this. If you don't move that needle this year, then your potential for next year is that much less.
And you compound the problem.
Exactly. That's what I was saying about when you don't get that money back. That's what I meant, Angus.
Right.
There's nothing to do with the approved budget, nothing to do with excess money. It just simply has to do with if your cap is, let's just say the cap is 146. Let's just pretend, with the maximum tax levy. If that would top out at 146, and you choose to have a budget that's at 145, it just means that next year, that extra $1 million is gone. Like that does not get put into any equation. That's left on the table. That's what I meant.
And
I see
I
what
will also like to explain too, by looking at this slide, depending on the tax levy increase you pick, the use of reserves, remember reserves are a one-shot revenue. And remember, in the beginning of all this, I explained what a structurally balanced budget meant. A structurally balanced budget is you fund reoccurring expenditures like payroll with reoccurring revenues. Now you get to the point here where you go into an unstructurally balanced situation. Because remember, when you use reserves in the budget like this that you can't replace, the next year you've created a hole. For example, you come out at 0%. Use of reserves, $5.7 million. Okay, that's a one-shot revenue. It's never coming back. What do you do the out year? Where does the 5.7 come from?
Well, that's exactly the point that I was just making to you. Last year, we spent $1 million to get out of our reserves to lower the percentage from 2% to 1%, right? Then at the end of the budget, at the end of the school year, we saved $2 million.
No.
That's the year
Angus,
before.
That's the year before, Angus. That was the year before.
I'm
Well-
sorry, my mic, I had to reboot, my mic got
No, that's okay.
shut off.
I'll just go back to this slide one more time and explain to everyone, of the 3.1, 2.8 of it is salary and
Yep.
benefit.
Yep.
Now go
2.85.
back here again and go, if you pick 0, you've now created a structurally unbalanced budget by $5.7 million potentially, or very close to it. If we don't finish the year and be able to replenish that in any way.
We're in a hole.
Because remember, when you reserve, it's like appropriating fund balance in a budget. You're using one-shot revenue. If you don't have that one-shot revenue the next year, where does it come from? You have no choice but to cut your budget. You have no choice.
And that is the slippery slope, and that is the danger.
Right,
of
yeah.
using reserves.
Yeah, that's the slippery slope.
Steve,
This year is the most important year, most crucial year. Okay, what's going on? Okay, so I think planning for a year down the road or 2 years down the road is a little bit more out of range for most of the community with regard to the current fiscal.
Well, I agree. I would go back to the Moody's letter that was just received too, and I'm in their analysis of the community. I'm not sure. From what they're saying, the bulk of our community, I won't say is immune, but is much better positioned to ride this out than most communities.
How are you stating that? What evidence?
Mooney came out. And rated.
With Moody's letter that you just received with a memo from me the other day.
Right.
Steve, could
They're
you go
a
back,
national, that's what they do for a living.
Steve, could you get back to the income slide?
This one?
Yes, the revenue. Yes, thanks. Okay, so the state aid, according to this, is 16, right?
Correct. All the sources of state aid, correct. Other
Okay.
than building aid, as you see.
Okay.
That's not guaranteed, though.
No, that's not guaranteed. I would.
Right. Absolutely. That's what we're saying. We're on shifting sands here. We're not sure.
It could very well be 12. It could very well be 10. It could very well
It could
8.
be. Well, I hope it's not 8, but yes, I would. It could be
I don't
low.
wanna be
I don't know by how much,
the
but yes, you're absolutely correct.
The
But
governor said that on television this week, that he could be cutting the budget by as much as 50%.
Right. Where do we pick up
Yeah.
8 million? We don't.
Right.
We don't pick up 8. There's no place to pick up 8.
You have to cut the budget. That's it. That's all you could do if that's the case.
Well, if you had to pick up 8 million, you're talking about programs and people. There's no doubt about it.
Wow.
You have no choice.
So there's no other revenue. Zero. There's nothing. There's
You see what we get. I mean, most of our school budget is and has been based off your local tax levy.
right.
And only about $300,000 is not from salaries and benefits, you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's what you're looking at right now.
Yeah.
2.8 of the 3.1.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I mean, we've gone in with the scalpel and done what we've, been asked to do.
And we've been very conservative, I think, with our
Yeah.
benefits and our salaries. There's nothing, we cut the health insurance even more. We cut a little bit of the TRS. I think we've done as much as we possibly can.
Right.
I think what Steve is saying is correct. And this is my 20th year. This is probably one of the tightest budgets I've ever seen. We've really done as much as we can, even moving that 700,000 out. That's a big step too, to make some kind of difference. So I don't think there's very much room here. Not that's going to make it some sort of significant difference and pick up $5 million to balance this. So.
Mm-hmm.
How many bake sales can we have?
Steve, if you go back to the slide that has the difference between the levy increase and the reserves. Yeah. Is this the one? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right now, our tax cert is at about 85% funded. The other slide you have shows the differences in the tax cert from 65% down to 59%.
Yes.
Correct. I'm just curious, and I mean, I could probably figure it out myself, but if we brought the tax cert down to 70%, what would that equate to a tax levy increase? And you may not be able to figure that out right now. I mean, but it's just I'm just curious about maybe for the next meeting.
Well, we've been saying, Matt, since I've been on this board, that the reason why we're putting all this money into reserves was for when a rainy day. If you look out the window, it's a downpour.
Not tax certs.
Well, for all of our reserves, it's
Tax
all for.
certs. Well, what we've always said for tax certs is that we funded that 100%.
This is
No,
terrible.
we shouldn't have been funding them 100%.
No, I just said
Not
we had
even NISPA recommended. That's what we were doing, but NISPA said we should.
Right.
We didn't have to do that.
Right.
And then,
So right now, so based on what we did last year, now we're down to 85% funding for tax cert. That's where we are right now, 85%.
okay.
I'm asking what the potential tax levy would be for this budget if we brought it down to 70%. That was my question.
No, because it only has
Yeah,
59 to 65. I see what you're saying.
Right.
Right.
You have to.
Right.
I mean, you assume maybe it's.
I would also
And that's if you use
that we are using all the other reserves as well. We're using them at a level that we think that we can sustain. Moving into the future and possibly be able to put some more money back in them when we end up this school year, to be able to use again in the out years. And again, I'll remind you, depending on how we end up this school year, obviously we may or may not touch this tax cert reserve. We may not have to. We may not. But again, planning for the worst and hoping for the best. And depending on what's going to happen with things like transportation, when almost 4 months of the transportation are now, we may or may not get voted on until we have those questions. I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered, over the next few weeks, from the state education department. And as we start to get some of those answers, I think we can then focus our lens with a little bit more clarity as well going forward.
Right.
I don't necessarily think we have a bad budget number right now. Like I said, I think we with the scalpel as much as we possibly can from here on, depending on what happens. The instrument we use is going to be larger and deeper, and the cuts will be deeper. And you're going to be looking at people and programs. There's no doubt from here.
What if? Okay, here's from deep left field or right field.
Okay.
Any thought? And this is for everyone. What would a salary freeze be? What would that do?
Well, let's go back to this slide.
Yeah,
In $144 million budget, 1.7, a little over 1%. I mean, you know,
okay, so salary freeze would only give us a million, 1 point.
you know, just a touch over 1%.
Okay, all right.
That gets you down under 2%.
I mean, once again, this would have to be, this is, look, we are a community, and we all have to, it's like everyone has to pitch in, and we all have to do what we can do to save money. And I'm just thinking, look, we've all gone through salary freezes at some point, I would think, in our working lifetime. And it's not pleasant, and it's a loss of income, and you never get it back, no matter what anyone tells you. And that's just the way it is. And I'm just thinking maybe if an MOA, and this is what it's going to be, because for the community, and we have to sacrifice without giving up programs, without giving up teaching positions. Really doing something that we have to do.
Do you need agreement from the bargaining units to do a freeze?
I would think so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we can just do them.
No, but I think it's something that
you would need all the bargaining units to agree to that.
It's almost like we have to do like a Zoom meeting with all the bargaining units and say, listen, this is going to be tough, but at least you're getting what you got this year, and we'll just continue it. But I don't know. I'm just thinking how we can save a chunk without dropping our reserves even more and more and more. And then all of a sudden, as you mentioned, which really scared me, that during a recession type period, that all of a sudden all of the people will be receiving money back because the value of their homes is going to be down, and taxes, we're going to have to now start shelling out money.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just throwing that out. Like I said, it was from deep left or right field, all depending on who you.
I don't know if it's quite as deep as you think it is.
It's Mr. Schloika said, if you're talking about helping the taxpayers to be able to pay and keeping the number manageable and preserving your reserves, that seems to be, if you want to keep your people in your programs, that seems to be about the last thing you could do.
Or maybe the first thing, maybe that, hey, you know what? We're going to do this because we care about the community, and we're all going to take okay, we'll freeze it. Your 2021 salaries are going to be the same as your 1920s. Not 1920. I'm 1847, but
1845.
Right. Thank you. So it's just something where the community will see that, hey, the teachers are voluntarily, it's not being, done. This is what we're doing done. It's, the unions come out and say, hey, we understand what's going on. We're working with your kids. We've worked with your kids while they were at home, and just that type of a real solid community effort. And maybe everyone's saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, because in this slide, I'm scared. The next to the last bullet, will aid be adjusted / reduced?
Mm-hmm.
I will not use the word, but sure as what, they will be reduced.
Yep.
Adjusted for sure. And it won't be adjusted up. It's going to be adjusted way down, possibly way down. And that's scary. And
one of the things that the state has been saying, maybe for the next school year, is that students will be coming to school at various times. Okay, so not a crush, which is an interesting situation with regard to busing. And the other is in terms of the classroom, that they have more separation within the classroom, as well as the students wearing. So those are questions that we haven't even discussed yet.
Yeah, like lower, so it's what basically lowering the capacity, the head count within the buildings
Yeah.
and doing some staggered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
If I might, before we get on too many tangents,
Sorry.
just kind of like to reel us back in here and just say, let's not panic too much yet. I would say this,
thanks.
and again, everyone recommends that, hey, listen, wait till the end of the month to see where the state is going to come at. We'll have another 2 weeks under our belt, so to speak, if you will, with the coronavirus situation. Let's see if we're going to come back this school year. Let's see what the receipts are looking like at the state of New York, and see what Albany is recommending, because the state education department is doing surveys right now that they'll be able to give us more answers. The New York State Superintendents Association will also be chiming in. So will the New York State Business Officials Association and every other association, along with school boards, will also be chiming in on this, and to see what they're going to do with school district. Because again, I would remind everybody that as the positioning goes, remember, not only are you in one of the top 40 school districts in the state, but you're also probably one of the top 40 school districts in the state to be in the best financial position to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So keep that in the back of your mind, that, at least, get some sleep tonight with that, because we are, and I would hope the taxpayers would be able to get some sleep tonight as well with that. Is that, you've got some very bright people on this screen that I'm looking at tonight, and we have some very bright people that work in this district that are working very hard to again use the scalpel approach to make sure that every possible person maintains their job, and that we maintain every possible program and opportunity for our kids.
Well, that's
And we end with that note, and you folks, definitely your hearts are in the right places, and so are your minds. I mean, right now our thinking is kind of all over the place a little bit, because we're able to do that, and we want to do that, and because we don't have all the information that we need to make, I would say, the most educated decision yet that we could.
I would hope.
I think we've gotten our budget number down probably as far as I would like to see it. From here on, it's okay. Let's see what the state is going to offer us, and let's see how we now maneuver and position ourselves based on that.
okay.
I would also like to
Steve?
see people who are watching or listening to this program that maybe they would, email in some of their questions and have a voice in what we're discussing this evening.
Yeah.
Get their opinion.
Lee, you were going to say something?
Taxpayers and voters.
I was just going to thank you, Steve. I think you said that perfectly. This is where we are right now based on the information we have. We do have some time. You're not being asked to vote on it tonight. You're not going to be asked to vote on it, I don't think, on May 5th.
Right.
We have time to see how much more information we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I would remind everybody that a vote, as we know, June 1st at least was the date given that I know of. If you know more information, please enlighten me. But
No, they haven't.
We have the whole month of May yet to sit down and still, use our thinking caps, so to speak, in the school phrase, to coin a phrase. And to think about this some more, and to see, what else we can do. Because like I said, I'm looking at a whole lot of very bright people on this screen tonight. And like I said, I know I work with many other very, very bright people. And who knows what will come out of this in the end. But let's see what kind of clarifying information we get from the state of New York as they move forward in the next 15 to 30 days as well.
Okay. Steve, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry, Steve, could you, I know that Melissa would probably like to have if you could email her the different screens, or I don't know how you would do that. I'm not.
The
It's on our website.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on board docs.
Oh,
Yep.
right. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Forget about that. No, you don't have to. And
Right.
Steve
Does
and
anybody-
Teresa, thank you.
Does anybody have anything else?
Yes, Steve, there were, someone sent in 3 questions for you. Can you repeat those questions now and give the answers to all of us?
I cannot right now, only because I don't have permission from that individual. But I can say the questions are answered in the totality. They were answered tonight, and they were answered in the prior two slide presentations that I gave. They weren't any questions that were new.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Teresa.
Steve, Teresa, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. for your
Very,
time.
it was a great presentation, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
I'm
Thanks, Teresa.
going to
Thank you,
stop
Doug.
sharing my screen now, and I'll be turning it over to Eric.
Okay.
Eric, are you there?
Thanks.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. All yours.
Hi, Steve.
So Eric, if you could put the agenda up,
Will do.
thank you.
All right. So we're going to move into the regular meeting. Heather, you're there somewhere?
I am here, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Heather.
I wanted to make sure you were there before we started with the regular meeting.
Okay. I have my email open too, so
I'm sorry?
I also have my email open just to see if
Okay.
anybody is sending emails. So
Okay. So at this time, we will recall to order the meeting of the Suffern Central Board of Education, April 21st, 2020. Let the record reflect all board members are virtually present with the exception of Melissa Reamer. What we'll do is we'll do the pledge, and then if you see on the agenda, we will have a moment of silence while we're standing for Phil Tisi.
Yes.
And then when we come back, what I'll do is I'll read into the record the motion for executive. Okay. So why don't we all rise for the pledge?
And Tom's got a flag.
Okay. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty
and justice for all.
And if you would please remain standing to honor the memory of Phil Tisi. Thank you. Okay.
About Phil for a second.
I'm sorry?
Can I just say a word about Phil?
Sure.
You know, Phil obviously was from Suffern, taught in the district there, and I taught in East Ramapo. But we both taught the Syracuse Project Advance program. And although in different schools, different students and everything, we were willing to share ideas and so forth. And he was such a super, super teacher, okay? The kids loved him and he loved the students also in terms of the community. And even after he left, Suffern teaching, okay, he continued really to support the community. So he's a person who will be very, very, sorely missed.
Thank you.
Fine words, Don.
Okay. Heather, I'm going to just take this moment just to read into the public record the motion for executive.
okay.
So the motion, there were 3 executive agenda items. Number 1, reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools and school attorney the matter of Dale versus Suffern Central School District. Reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of business, assistant superintendent of human resources, and school attorney, employment history of non-pedagogical employee 04212020. And reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of human resources, and school attorney, negotiations between the Nurses Association and professional supervisory organization bargaining units, negotiations with particular bargaining units, and negotiations of particular matters with the custodial unit and SEA. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. 1.08, Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, 1.08, minutes of regular meeting for April 7th. Do I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Any abstentions?
James, enough.
You tell him, Angus.
Oh, God.
All right.
I thought I was muted, sorry.
1.09, acting superintendent comments.
So I would like to extend my comments today to Mark Levy. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. Mark is our internal auditor from Nugent and Hausler, and he is going to speak about our internal audit.
Okay, thank you.
So
Just so you know, I called in and I videoed in, but my microphone on my computer doesn't seem to be working, so I'm not sure if you're seeing me or not seeing me because I'm actually just talking to my phone, but I have a video on.
And we can hear you.
Okay, good. All right, so does everybody have a report on the facilities usage that we did?
It was emailed to them.
Okay. All right, so what I'll do this evening is I'll go through the report briefly, and then we can talk about some other things. And if anyone has any questions, if the board or any of the district staff have any questions, please feel free. You can interrupt me as I go through, or wait till I'm done. Either way, I'm fine with that. Okay. So with that, I guess I'll get started. Thanks for having Nugent Hausler do the internal audit for the district in the past year. The area that was chosen was facilities usage, obviously. So hopefully you had a chance to look through the reports that we did. And just to go through why we're doing this is that all districts in New York State are required under education law to have an annual risk assessment update performed every year, and also chosen an area of risk to be reviewed by an internal auditor. Okay, so that's why we're doing this in accordance with education law. So to go through the report that we did, we basically, as you can see, if you have it in front of you on page 1, we basically use 3 categories to rate the areas that we're reviewing. So satisfactory, basically there was none or significant recommendations. Acceptable, there were minimal instances of non-compliance with district policies. Or unsatisfactory, there was non-compliance with district policies and procedures. So in Suffern's case, facilities usage, we graded it as acceptable. We had just minimal instances of non-compliance, and we'll go through that if you haven't read them yet. We'll go through that briefly. Basically, on page 2 of the report, we talk about that just past halfway mark on page 2, the procedures that we did. So we reviewed policies and regulations for covering facilities usage. We interviewed management and staff of the district. We documented internal controls over the billing, receivables, and collections of facilities usage. And we selected 32 applications, facility use applications, and performed the following procedures. We verified that there's proper documentation of the approval process. We traced it to the school dude calendar, and we compared terms of the application to determine uses for a current period and amount billed agreed to district policy. And we also verified if the organization provided valid proof of insurance. So generally, I'll sum up before I go through the actual findings real quick. Our findings, basically, they come down to whether the district followed the written policies and regulations, or if the current policies and regulations maybe didn't address a specific matter. So, and then when you go through, as I go through the actual items that we found, you'll see more what I mean. Fixes on most of these were fairly simple. So in the first finding, we reviewed 32 applications, and of them that we reviewed, there were 2 instances where the users were billed different amounts than what the board had approved within board regulation 1500-R. Okay, so we recommended, of course, that the district's facility should be billed in accordance with this regulation. So the district's response, which I'm fine with all these responses, by the way, that they all make sense and they're all good. Basically, it says the district has adjusted the regulation to reflect the billing was done as it was their intention to bill the way that it was done. And I can go into more detail, but hopefully you've read this already, so I won't bore you if we're going through it again. But that was a very easy fix. The second finding, the district allows an organization to use parking lots. And this isn't being addressed basically in either the policy or board regulations. So we recommend that you expand the policies and regulations. And again, if you've read assume you've read the district's response, basically that's what you've done. It says that we have adjusted our 1500-R to reflect that we will not charge for use of our parking lot in this case. The third finding, it was basically a documentation issue. The district's application for facilities use includes a section to document approvals by the superintendent and director of business operations. We did not always see these approvals on the samples of that we reviewed, though we were able to satisfy ourselves that they were reviewed and there was proper approval. So again, the district here, in accordance with its operating standards, has changed the application so that new organizations are approved by the superintendent and all applications are signed by the district, the director of business operations. Okay. The last finding that we had was during our review of the district's fee schedule, it included the public use of school facilities. Included use of the school facilities regulation. We found that the fees charged for pool usage increased when the number of participants exceeded 20 individuals. However, the application that we reviewed didn't have any indication of how many swimmers participated, but we were under the assumption that more than 20 had participated. So anyway, the finding for the district, or the recommendation, or the plan by the district, I should say, I'm sorry, to respond to this finding was that they have adjusted the 1500-R to not include that extra amount of billing because they felt that the fees had been increased during the year already, and it was their intention to not bill this extra amount for people for sessions with over more than 20 people. Okay, so the district recommendations to what we had our findings makes total sense. And again, like I say, these weren't like really egregious findings. I thought that it was generally a pretty clean audit. Even though we had 4 findings, I thought it was pretty clean, and the district is doing a good job overall. Any questions? I went through that I tried to do like the abbreviated version of the report. Any questions? Okay. So that was the findings there. Then we also though performed a risk assessment update for the current school year. So for the 2019-2020 school year, we did a risk assessment update. And of that risk, when we do the risk assessment update, I'm sorry, I just want to flip the page. So we basically look at source documentation, we read board minutes, we look at bank accounts, receipts, disbursements, payroll documentation, all kinds of budgetary reports and financial statements for all funds. We look to see that the controls that were in place in prior years are still in place. We look to see if there's been a change in staff, if there's been any turnover in staff, and we also look to see if any new controls are working properly, or the existing controls from prior years have changed and or are still working as they are supposed to be. Are they working effectively? Okay. So when we get done with doing our review, we basically come down to what are your high risk areas. The board can choose, or the audit committee can choose to choose a different risk area to do the internal audit for the year, but usually you pick one of the high risk areas. But I have plenty of times where districts, choose to pick a different area. So the high risk areas for Suffern school districts basically come down to be cash receipts, purchasing, accounts payable, cash disbursements, payroll area, fixed assets, and inventory controls, and extra classroom activity funds. And while the district, just because they're considered high-risk areas, does not mean that the district does not have good controls in these areas. Some of these areas are just going to be inherently high-risk areas due to the nature of the transactions, the dollar amounts involved. So no matter what, like payroll is one of those instances where you do have controls in place. However, the nature of payroll is just inherently a high-risk area. So no matter how good the controls are, we're going to have to call it high risk. That's for every district in the state that has a similar issue. So areas that we've done in the past, I can go back to 2015-2016 school year. So the district chose to audit payroll and human resources in that year. In the 2016-17 school year, it was purchasing, accounts payable, cash disbursements. In the 2017-18 school year, you chose extra classroom activity funds. And in the 2018-19, which is what we just reviewed, was facilities usage. So for, to be in accordance with education law, the board is going to have to determine what area you choose to audit. And obviously with what's going on, we're going to have to talk about that. I haven't heard anything, how we're going to get that done once you just decide to pick an area. Obviously with the school being closed, and social distancing, I'm not sure when we're going to be able to get into the district even to perform an internal audit. So that's a whole nother issue. And the state hasn't come up with anything that there's any extensions of doing this stuff yet. They haven't really put anything out on this yet. So I don't know, unless Teresa's heard something that I'm not aware of. But
No, not at all.
Yeah. So
I would imagine they will have to do something. I'm sure we're not, there's many districts in the same boat here.
Yeah, 'cause we can do some things, remotely or, getting things emailed and scanned to us. However, let's just say you chose payroll. There's a lot of source documentation that'd be involved, and we need to see a lot of that source documentation firsthand. And for instance, like a typical payroll run is voluminous. And I don't know, we usually look at more than one payroll run, so I don't even know how easily that is going to be able to send us that remotely, off site. I don't know. So that's something that we'll have to talk about, in the near future. But payroll is an area, just going back to that. You haven't done it since 2015-16. That would be a possibility to review if you chose to for this current school year. Areas that the comptroller has kind of looked at. I kind of looked over what some of their reports have been: payroll, purchasing, fiscal management and reserves, extra classroom activity, cafeteria funds, and the IT area. That's some of the areas I've noticed that the comptroller has focused on over the last year or two. But again, you don't have to choose any of those, but the high-risk areas that I mentioned would be normally areas you would probably look to review. So, I don't know, any questions, or I don't know if you want to discuss this further, or you want to talk about it amongst yourselves and get back to us. Obviously, I don't think there's a real rush because of the nature of what's going on, but at some point you do have to pick an area.
Okay. Yeah, I think that this is something that we probably can make a decision on at the next meeting. Our audit committee chairperson is not with us tonight, so okay. I think that her involvement and her opinion would be important. So I would prefer to defer this, until then maybe the next meeting, and we can discuss it and make a decision then on what do we want to do for next year.
Okay, great. Okay,
anybody
have any questions? Yeah, unless you have questions, I thank you for the opportunity to work with the district, and look forward to hearing back from you and seeing what area you choose to pick. And if you have questions or you have a few areas you want to discuss, please contact me, and I'll be happy to discuss them with you.
Thank you, Mark.
All right,
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for your time.
Hey, everybody, stay safe. Stay safe. Take care.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Lee, did you have anything else for this portion of the meeting?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay. All right. Public participation. This is on action items only. So we had put out, when we posted this, an opportunity for the public to take a few days and provide the district in advance with any kind of statements that they would like to have read if there was anything. So I don't know if Heather, if you received any emails or not.
I haven't yet.
You have not?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So then what we'll do is we'll move on. We'll close this portion of the meeting, and if anything does come through, then we'll address it at that point. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so action items. There are 5 action items on the agenda for tonight. I'm going to poll 2.01 and 2.03. Does anybody have any others that they wish to pull from a consent agenda? Okay. Then we will make a motion for a consent agenda for 2.02, 2.04, and 2.05. So do I have a motion for that?
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie, is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Cairns, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. 2.01, professional personnel report. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Mr. Shapiro, do I have a second?
Second?
Mr. Cairns, discussion. Lee?
Okay, so thank you. So I asked Matt to pull this because, you know, this is such an important night for so many of our staff in their careers. Earning tenure as an educator is a rite of passage. It's one we celebrate. Every year we get to celebrate it with a beautiful reception. Our teachers and our administrators have lovely speeches, you know, spoken by their supervisors. And we didn't get a chance to do that this year. We do really want to celebrate our tenure recipients. We intend to celebrate them either later this spring or in September if we have to wait that long. But I did want to take a moment just to recognize our wonderful educators. These are amazing people. I've had the pleasure in some cases of hiring them, of working with them throughout their probationary periods. These are amazing people in the classroom, in the school, in an extracurricular environment. It really just a terrific group. So I wanted to take a moment just to read their names individually so that sort of we always at least have a record of that in the video. So Kelly Benatti, elementary principal from RP Connor. Tom Behrens, physical education teacher at Sloatsburg. Liz Vortek, English teacher at Suffern High School. Matt Chanowski, special ed teacher at Suffern High School. Robin Cooper, special education teacher at RP Connor. Dana Marie DeSiena, mathematics teacher at Suffern Middle School. Sarah Guerra, social studies teacher at Suffern High School. Oscar Henriquez, English as a second language at RP Connor. Sarah Horn, mathematics at Suffern High School. Kendrick Maginero, special education at Suffern High School. Giancarlo Palumbo, physical education at Montebello and the middle school. Serafina Rodriguez, English as a second language at Sloatsburg. Stacy, physical education teacher at Sloatsburg. Stacy Samora, mathematics at Suffern High School. And Nancy Struhar, business at Suffern High School.
All right. All right. Thank you, Lee, for reading their names. I know it's you know, we should be recognizing them in a much more formal and, you know, a much nicer reception right now. And but I agree, and I like what you said, that will happen, and I'm sure we all are going to make sure that it happens once we get back to life as we knew it. So that being said, all those in favor of approving this personnel report signify by saying aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? Thank you very much.
Congratulations all.
To all,
Congratulations.
to all teachers.
Great accomplishment.
2.03 capital improvement project for grandstand restoration and fire alarm replacement. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro, discussion. I will turn this to Lee again.
So we became aware this morning that we had 5 capital projects that went out to bid. The 3 of them relating to the vestibules came in way over budget. And so this recommendation to you asks you to decline those. We were hoping to have 2 of them approved though tonight, contract number 4, which is for the grandstands at the middle school, and contract number 5, which is for the fire alarms. We learned this morning that contract number 5 for the fire alarms had a spec regarding the cabling that is a very expensive cabling that's actually more expensive than the one that's required to have. And so there was an inconsistency in the bids with contract number 5. And so I'm asking you to amend this resolution tonight to not approve contract 5 also. So really the only one you're approving is contract 4. So we can rebid contract 5 with the correct cabling specification in it.
Sure.
Okay. So does anybody want to make a motion to amend this recommendation?
Moved. I move that contract 5.
You're making a vote?
Yes, not be considered at this time.
Okay. So
Would that be the way, Lee, that I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay. Which deals with the fire alarm at the middle school.
okay, so Mr. Shapiro, you're making the motion?
Right, that we should not consider contract 5, which deals with the fire alarms at the middle school.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Mr. McKenzie? So all those in favor of removing, or I don't know if it's really removing, but all those in favor of declining contract number 5 signify by saying aye.
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 All those against? Any abstentions? Okay. So now back to the motion on the table for the motion on the table for 2.03. Heather, are we doing okay with this so far?
Would you not make another motion to vote on?
4.
Well,
To vote?
And that's probably the best way is to now vote to approve contract 4.
Okay.
right.
Right. So do we need a new motion for that?
Moved.
Well, yeah. You're voting on it now on the amended 2.03.
Okay, so now we need a motion on the amended 2.03. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those against? Any abstentions? Heather, did we get it?
You got it.
All right, let's
Good
move
job.
on. Okay, we'll move over to board member comments.
Administrative.
Yeah, there's no reports or any information items.
Information items, nothing. Okay.
So, board member comments.
If I could,
Yep.
First I would like to, hello?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I would just like to offer my most sincere condolences to the family of Phil Teesey. We as a school district and as a town have lost a tremendous individual. I know Don Carnes just mentioned what a tremendous asset Phil was. He was a go-to guy. Just a tremendous loss, and my sincere condolences to the family. Alicia and the boys and his daughter. And I'd also like to congratulate all our new tenured teachers. Congratulations. I wish you the best. You're in a great district, and we're so happy to have you here. I wish you the very, very best in your careers. Thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else?
I'd also like to add to Tom's comments to the numerous educators who received tenure tonight. Congratulations. You're in the best profession. I think Don and I can both vouch for that. Don and I spent over 300 years in education, and it's really great. Being a teacher was probably one of the best things that I've ever done. And I hope that the experiences that all of you have are far exceed the ones that I have. And if they do, then you're in for a terrific career. So congratulations.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Well, seeing as there's no other comments from the board, we will move to public participation. This is for all district related items. Heather, I don't know if you have anything that was submitted from the public.
Let me just take a look. I was just checking something. No, I don't.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. Again, with this, we gave an opportunity for the public to submit statements, and it looks like we don't have any to read, so we'll close that portion of the meeting. Acting Superintendent, closing comments.
I want to once again congratulate our staff members who were recognized with tenure tonight. I want to thank you. I want to thank the board for supporting my recommendations there. I also want to just another thank you to our community, our healthcare workers, our people on the front lines of this. For some of us, it's been 6 weeks at home. For those of you on the front lines, it's been 6 weeks not at home. And I'm very grateful for what you do, very appreciative of the support of our community. Our food service workers continue to serve meals to all of our students, providing meals in 2 deliveries a week. I know that many of our families, I saw the Sloatsburg Food Pantry tweeted last night, their increase is they've gone up 2.5. They are servicing 240% more families in their last 2 food distributions. They had more new families in the last 2 new distributions than they had previously served at all. So they've really stepped it up. They've done that with the support and the donations of our community. So I'm very grateful for that. I want to thank again our custodial staff, done a fantastic job. Our educational staff had a chance, and clerical staff had a chance to come into the buildings for a short time today to pick up stuff. Now that each time the closure gets extended, we have people that need to get into their offices or their classrooms to get materials to, continue preparing. So we had folks come in today, and our maintenance and custodial staff are the ones who clean up after every time that happens, disinfecting everything, making sure everything's in tip-top shape. A huge support to our clinical staff, our special education staff, and our teaching staff who have continued to go above and beyond to support our students, to meet them where they are with their needs. We've talked for 6 weeks now about flexibility and patience. In some cases, that patience is wearing a little thin, and it's even more remarkable to see how our staff continues to step up and support our families. So I'm very grateful for that. And I just wanted to make sure I shared that with everyone.
Right. Thank you. Okay. At this time, we'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
No,
Everybody wants to stay on?
moved.
Mr. Shapiro, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McKenzie, all those in favor signify by saying aye.